All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the updates, and you can stop and ask me questions if you like. Today we're starting the new hybrid schedule, so anybody who signed up for hybrid can come to class at school depending on their last name. So if your last name is A through L and you signed up for hybrid on the last survey, then you should be here at school today and tomorrow. If your last name is M through Z, then your days are Wednesday and Thursday. FYI, you have to do virtual learning on the other days. Apparently there were some students, I don't know if they were freshmen or what, who thought that if they were coming to school for the 2 days a week that they didn't need to do the other days. But it's just sort of like a phase in so that people can start getting back to school. So if you signed up for hybrid, I think there's only 2 people in this class who signed up for the hybrid, then that's an option for you to come to hybrid on the days for your last name. So that's also the reason for the schedule change that we have. Ironically, there are, I think, maybe 50 students on campus today, 40 students out of the 150 possible. But the schedule is set up for a block schedule, just like we had before spring break 2020. So if you look, I did put the schedule on. I also tweeted it and sent it out last week when we received it. So all the class times are basically shifting to accommodate breakfast in the morning, lunches here in the cafeteria, and then a full block schedule for the classes. The idea is that in all your classes, you would have about an hour, 45 minutes or an hour of instruction every day, and then the remainder of the period, the last hour or 45 minutes or whatever, would be asynchronous, where you could work on your assignments for that class. So it's kind of like back and forth all day long, Zoom, off, Zoom, off, Zoom, off. Grades in this class are still pretty good, so I don't feel like we need to meet on Wednesdays. We may do that second semester, just depending on how things go, at least for a little bit. We're going to get into some more challenging literature second semester, and the pace picks up a bit also in the second semester. So to support that, it might be handy to have class a little bit on that Wednesday. I don't really ever intend to do Fridays unless there's a paper due or something like that, and y'all think it would be handy to have like a little Q&A or a workshop or something like that. We can do that. But in any case, so next time I see you will be a week from Monday. Next week is Thanksgiving week, and we are off. So the next time I'll see you will be this November 30th, same time here. I don't think they're going to be changing the schedule anymore. I think this is it for the year, unless, you know, the crazy government comes up with something that we have to do. All these changes are because of the government regulations, not because Weslaco East is weird and wants to put everybody through schedule changes. But there's certain rules that they're putting out about attendance and that sort of thing. So Thanksgiving break is next week. I do not intend to give you any assignments for that time. The assignments for this week will all be due on Saturday, but of course you can turn them in early if you like. If you don't want to have anything after the bell on Friday or Thursday or whatever, you can set that up to whatever works for you. But I'm not going to be giving any assignments, nothing that you have to do for class on the 30th. On the 30th, we're going to start talking about writing about the metamorphosis. So this week's pretty much like talk about chapter 3, wrap up. I'm going to do a few little interactive things with you today to give us some talking points about the novella, but I don't intend to give you any assignments over Thanksgiving break. I don't really give any assignments over any breaks except Christmas. I think I've already mentioned that you will read a novel over Christmas, and you'll have a choice. Usually I pick 5 or 6 different titles that you can choose from. We'll talk about that when we get back from Thanksgiving break, but then I'm not going to give you anything over Easter or spring break. I feel like that's a pretty good balance. You know, it's not like every time we have a break that there's an assignment, really just that one time. So I feel like that's a good balance. Just a reminder on absences. If you are absent from class, I know that people have things going on. I know that people are looking after their younger siblings, jobs, all kinds of things. And so I do record the class every single time. And there is a playlist of every single class period that we have had. And so if you're absent, you need to go back and watch that video just so that you're up to speed with what happened in class. I mean, we have the technology, right? You can watch me at 1.5 speed if you want. I'll probably sound like a little mouse, but you can do that. Uh, the idea is that then you would be missing out on very little of the class experience. If you don't come to class and then you don't watch videos, you're going to start to be lost and ask me questions like, what are we doing? What do I have to turn in? How do I do that? All that stuff I go over in class. So I know that many of you are here all the time and you know, but I'm not going to penalize you if you're not here in class. You know, it's crazy times. To make up for that, I have the video. So make sure that you go and watch those. The link to that is always right here on the main page, right here where we have the YouTube channel right here. This is on the stream. I always try to keep this at the top. And if you click on it, you can just see all of the class periods that we have had. Plus some of the other videos that I've done, like how to do a 1, 2, 3 poetry analysis and things like that. So everything for this class. This is a private list. I'm not broadcasting it to everybody who, I don't know who would turn in for that, but there are people out there, I guess. Everybody has something on YouTube that they like to watch. But the only people who really, it's unlisted. So everybody who gets it are just, you know, the people who have the link, which is us. So it's a private thing, but do go and look at those. Also, if we talked about something in class and you go to work on it and it's confusing, you know, you can of course email me, but you can also go back and watch that section of the video just to get a refresher on what you were supposed to do, especially if you wait until later in the week to work on the, I know that some classes demand that you turn stuff in like the day that it's assigned. So I'm trying to be flexible, and if you need to go back and like hear instructions again, the videos are a good place to go. Okay, assignments for this week. I wanted to keep it kind of minimal because I wanted everything to be finished before we go on break. So we do have a homework check today. We'll get to that in just a second. There is an assignment to review the metamorphosis with the creation of some memes. And I want you to practice some multiple choice AP questions for the metamorphosis on formative. The first one, the homework check, is going to be turned in today before we go. The meme review and the multiple choice practice will be for Saturday. So you can fit that into your schedule wherever it makes sense to you. And I'll talk about, well, maybe I can talk about them right now. So the meme review assignment is to go back through the metamorphosis and use what you know about the novella to create 5 memes. And the assignment is down here, I'll show you. Right here, meme review of the metamorphosis. So you're going to make a slideshow. I have a slideshow that has some templates and also the assignment itself, like the directions and stuff. So you can click on that and make a copy for yourself if you want. You don't have to use the templates that are on here, but I will go through the instructions with you, and that way, if you have questions or the people who aren't here can go back and watch the video and figure out what to do. I'm assuming that you know what a meme is, but if you don't, what have you been doing on the internet for the last 10 years? In any case, this assignment is to create a slideshow of 5 memes. The goal of the memes is to demonstrate the depth of your understanding of the metamorphosis. You cannot make a meme about something that you do not understand because the meme is not going to work. So today we're going to wrap up metamorphosis. We're going to talk about it a little bit. I have some interactive stuff to do with you. But the assignment is to create 5 memes on a slideshow, and then you'll just submit the slideshow. So you can, if you want to skip ahead, you can see that I have different ones here. There are, I don't know, maybe 10, maybe more. I don't know how many I made. You only have to do 5, but these are options, right? These are templates that you can choose from. If you're not familiar with the meme, then I put a link here that explains what the meme is doing, like the background on the meme. If you don't know that this is distracted boyfriend, I mean, everybody knows this is distracted boyfriend, but then you can add a text box and put it in here to say what he was looking at and what he's looking at now. And you have to like create a character or think of the character from the Metamorphosis and try to see what they used to pay attention to. You know, Gregor Samsa used to be interested in his sales job, and now he's just interested in, you know, climbing over the furniture. You know, that kind of thing. So then over here, I want you to write a brief explanation, maybe a couple of sentences explaining the meme. Now, you shouldn't have to explain memes. I understand that. Out in the world, memes exist and you either get them or you don't get them. But because this is an assignment, I want to make sure that you understand the piece. So there's a little spot here. So you do that for any 5. Now, if you don't want to use the ones that are on my templates, you can go and find other memes. And there are some resources on the 3rd slide here. You can create your own. I make memes all the time. Well, not all the time, but, you know, like literary memes so that they're funny for my students. Nobody else thinks they're funny, but people who've read the things that we're talking about in class. But there are some really good free meme creators online. If you don't know that much about memes, you might want to go to some of these other resources so that you can see some examples. But like I said, on each slide, you can click here and go to an explanation of that meme, how it came to be, a bunch of examples. You know, like this is pretty basic, right? Like, right. So I put that on there to help you. Let me see. Oh, where was I? You should choose memes that are varied in topic. For example, 4 memes about Greta is not varied. So try to mix it up a little bit. Also, I want to make sure that you have something from each of the 3 chapters to make sure that you've read all, you know, the whole thing. It's not terribly long. So make sure that you have ideas from all 3 chapters, and you need to be the creator of them. So make sure that they're original. Down here it just talks about how you can use the templates or you can create your own, but I think I've already talked about that. So are there any questions about that assignment? Remember that the goal is to demonstrate the depth of your understanding of the Metamorphosis. So if you can only give me superficial things like Gregor turning into a bug, then I'm not gonna think that you read very much of the Metamorphosis, because that happens in the first sentence. So, you know, like deepen it up a little bit so that you can show me that you read and understood the text. No questions on that one? Okay, the other assignment for this week that is also due on Saturday is a multiple choice practice on formative. I will show you what it looks like. You can't get into it until, I think I set it for 3 o'clock today. I don't think anybody's gonna run out at 3 o'clock and do it, but I will show you what it looks like. So we haven't practiced any multiple choice for AP yet. We've practiced writing short responses. When we get back from Thanksgiving, I'm going to show you how to write a full out AP analysis essay using the Metamorphosis. So we're going to do that in drafts and the final draft and all that stuff when we get back for those 2 weeks before exams. But this is what the, let me click right here. This is what it will look like when you go to take the multiple choice practice. So what I did was I took a text that was familiar to you. When you take the AP exam, they will give you pieces of things you have not read before. They go out of their way to try to find things that you haven't read before. So we already have the advantage in that we've already read the Metamorphosis. So the passages are going to seem familiar to you because you've already read them. Then there are some multiple choice questions after the passages. These are just right from the text. And then there are multiple choice questions. There are 15 questions total. And I put this at the top just so that you will know, and I'm gonna want to reinforce it right now, that I just want you to get a feel for the types of questions that are on the exam. We haven't done any multiple choice practice questions. We're going to start ramping that up as we get into the second semester. But the actual AP exam has 5 passages and 55 questions that you have 1 hour to do, and you have not read any of the passages. This practice has 3 passages with 15 questions that you need to complete in an hour. So we're starting off, we're just beginning, and you shouldn't feel a whole lot of pressure to do 15 questions in 1 hour. The passages are a little bit long, but you've already read them before. So just be a matter of refreshing your memory and then answering the questions. And then with the results from this practice, I'll get a lot of information about how we can go forward in practicing our multiple choice as we go forward. So we'll talk about the answers and all that stuff after Thanksgiving when we get back. But that one's going to be available right there on Formative. I like Formative a lot. I use it a lot. I think it's handy. It does the job. I don't have any complaints about it really. Sometimes it's glitchy, but very rarely, so compared to other things. So that's where you can find that one. And I think it should open, I think I set it for 3 o'clock today. So those are your 2 assignments for this week. And the other thing that I want you to do right now, go to assignment number 1 here. Oh, somebody's ahead of me already. Okay, I do have a homework check for you today. You're supposed to watch 3 videos, one on Kafkaesque, one on allegory, and the third one was kind of a bonus one. It's okay if you don't have notes on the Disney video, but maybe you do. I just felt like it could really reinforce the idea of allegory. So I want you to take a minute and take a picture of the notes that you did on those videos and submit them on that assignment. Like all these homework checks, if you can submit it to me during the class session, then, that's assuming that it's good notes, then that's an A. If you have to submit it later today, then that can still be like a high B, depending on the quality. Tomorrow, it's just my way of saying homework is important, right? So you can work on that right now while we start talking about the metamorphosis. Before we start talking about metamorphosis, are there any questions, while those are coming in, are there any questions about section 3? Anything that was confusing to you that where's my water? Oh, I left it over there. Anything that we should talk about before we start talking about the book as a whole, the novella as a whole, and all of that? Was there anything that was confusing at the end, or? You can mention it in chat, or you can unmute and speak aloud, unless you sound like Gregor. If you sound like Gregor, you might have to type in the chat. Oh, I wonder if Gregor could type in the chat with his funky arms and legs. Probably not. No, it made sense. Okay, because we're going to do a little bit of interactive discussion. I found this website. The one that I was using only let me do 5 slides for free, and then it wanted me to charge me $60 for the year. And I was like, I don't think so. So I have this one instead. We're going to hop on over to this one. Let me put present, and it will tell you at the top. So at the top up here, if you go to this site, slides.com/metamorph, then you can participate with me in our discussion of things like allegory in the novella. We're going to talk about a little bit of character and a little bit of plot. We'll talk about Kafkaesque. We'll talk about theme. I just set up, I could lecture on all those things, but I think it's more fun and interactive if we kind of work together on it. Okay, people are joining, good. So heading over there, and as soon as we see a few people in there, we'll start to make our way through those slides. So it's a way for you to participate in some of the topics that we're going to talk about today. to start wrapping up our study of metamorphosis. So metamorphosis is a very strange text. I have people who ask me all the time, is it science fiction? I don't think it's science fiction because he's a bug, that's a natural thing after all. But the question does arise, is Gregor really a bug? Because you know that can't really happen, right? So is it a fantasy type story? And I think we leave the work kind of with questions about that. And today's formative, actually, I asked you about that. Do you think that Gregor really turns into a bug, or is it like some kind of metaphor, right? And I mean, I have my opinions on that, but I'm not here to tell you my thoughts on works. I'm here to get you to have thoughts about works. So hopefully today's interactive slideshow participation thing will be just the thing to get you thinking and talking a little bit about those elements. So I see 6 people in there. Y'all need to join in on this. You can do it on your phone too if you want to separate your computer. It works just fine on your phone. Are there any problems with joining it? Or are y'all still working on uploading your homework? Maybe that's it. Well, this is our old picture that we had of the metamorphosis. And I think I gave this picture to you before we even started reading it so that you could react to the picture. And I'm thinking now, if you have finished reading the novella, that the image makes a lot more sense. To me, this is a brighter picture. I don't know, I just always picture Gregor's room as very dark paneled, lots of shadows. You could barely see him, right? Like he's under stuff and kind of hiding all the time. So I just always picture the room a lot less light, with a lot less light. It just always seems dark to me. But it doesn't really directly say that. Sometimes it talks about the weather. But obviously more and more furniture gets put in there. Oh, hearts. Look, I'm getting hearts. I don't know what that means, but that's cool. Okay, so let me start with this. And hopefully I don't have that reaction every single time. I think that you can do that on the slides, like just naturally, but okay. Are you hearting for Gregor? You feel bad for him? I don't know. Maybe you're hearting for Gregor, not me. All right, so I want to start off by talking about topics. When we talk about topics, we're saying, okay, these are the things that the work is basically about. There can be a wide variety of topics, and you know, topics can help us to understand themes. So it's good to sort of start thinking about topics in the work. So if you are on these slides, then you should be able to type in some important topics that we see in the metamorphosis. One that I might put in family, right? Family is one. You can just type in all the things that you think that the novella deals with, and they should start popping up here, hopefully. I haven't really tried this. Oh, okay, stress. Stress is coming at me. Yeah, okay, good transformation. Exhaustion with work, right? Maybe we can kind of identify with Gregor in that way. Can add more stuff. Discrimination. Despair. You know what else? Communication. Yeah, I was just gonna say miscommunication. Sort of dysfunctional communication. Opportunism. That's interesting. So on a word cloud, what happens is it will start registering the different words and phrases that people enter, and the larger the word, the more times people entered it. So you can start to see that the words that are bigger are things that people entered more frequently and some more common answer. Identity. Oh, I like that one too. Change of life. Mhm. Doubt, financial status, communication, singularity, change of life, mental health. Some people say, yeah, some people do say that Gregor is, sort of at his breaking point, and that's why he turns into a vermin. Isolation, perspective. Okay. Perspective, especially in the way that it works with communication, I think, because Gregor's still in the bug, and they don't, especially toward the end, they don't even validate that, the family, the Samses. So it's kind of like he's there, but they don't recognize that he's there anymore. So there's the double identity slash communication. Debt. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, if the guy who is in charge of making money for the family can't make money anymore, then what do? They have some extreme things that they start doing to make sure that they can still live. Relationships, especially family relationships, right? Good financial status, growth of individuals. Roles. Okay, loss. Roles within the household. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell who has the power situation in the family. Gregor might have had it, but then it's kind of vague about who's in charge of things as the story goes on. Helplessness, that's a good one too. Okay, so as these are neglect, as these are shifting, you can take any one of these. I think these are all good answers to the topics. You can take any one of these and turn them into a theme, because you can just ask yourself, what is the metamorphosis trying to say about family relationships? And then the answer to that is, sort of like a life lesson. What are we supposed to learn about family relationships through this novella? Because the relationships aren't good, right? Like there's a dysfunction there. So, what are we supposed to learn about identity or helplessness or burdens? Or like you can just pick any topic and ask yourself, what is the life lesson that Kafka is, or any author is trying to get across about that topic? We did that a lot with the poetry when we were doing the 1, 2, 3 analysis, and you can do that with any work. That's how you come up with a theme. We'll talk more about themes kind of toward the end of the interactive slides here. But all those are good answers. We'll move to the next slide. So topics can help us get to themes. What lessons about life can we learn from the metamorphosis? I just went over that. Here's one on identity. This is not the only one because we just saw like 30 different words that you could use to make a theme. But one is about identity. Our identity is made up of what we project, but also what others perceive about us. Because as much as Gregor is trying to communicate with his family and wishes for his life to be, sort of back the way it was, they perceive something different about him. They perceive him as sort of just a thing. They start calling it. So there's this idea about identity, and we can say, okay, that's true for Gregor Samsa, that's true for us, and so that makes it into a theme, a lesson about life that we all learn. We can make whoever we want to make out of ourselves, but people will still judge us based on what they perceive about us, no matter how carefully crafted we have made our identity. So that's an example of a theme. That's how we get from a topic to a theme. All right, I also want to talk about antagonists. So antagonists in this story are kind of aplenty. So I would like for you to pop in there with some ideas that you have. If Gregor's the protagonist, because obviously we follow his actions from the beginning to the end, his end, who or what are some things that get in Gregor's way? So Gregor is the action character. See if you can input some ideas about what prevents him and gets in his way. Being a bug, well, yeah, being a bug is a big thing. His dad, yeah. If you watch that video about Kafkaesque, there's a little background in there about Franz Kafka and his own father. So we can say sometimes those things overlap with the author's actual life. Okay, his room, especially they mess around with the furniture a lot in his room. First, they're going to take it all out, and then they start putting more in there because they get those lodgers. It's a good one. Lack of communication is definitely a antagonist because he can't, when he talks, it sounds weird and they can't understand him. His manager, especially in chapter 1. The deputy director is the same thing, yeah. The family's financial state, that's a good one too, because one of his main problems is that he can't make any money anymore, right? His role in the family, which also shifts. He goes from being almost the head, well, pretty much the head guy, to the one they don't talk about that sits under the sofa in the other room. The it. Oh yeah, his appetite. What do bugs eat anyway? I think it's probably something gross. I don't know. Do bugs eat like
Other bugs,
other
I
bugs?
think.
Yeah, right? Or like, don't some bugs that like house bugs eat like little minute pieces of skin and dander and stuff like that? I think they
Those are
do.
the really, really small ones.
Yeah. Well, Gregor is extra size. He's super sized. The stress involving his job. Okay, yeah, good. What about Greta? Is she a source of antagonism for him? Nobody put that. I just wonder what you think. Oh, his own mind.
Towards the end, probably, I think so. But in the
Yeah.
beginning, she's kind of like helping him in a sense. When
Mhm.
towards the end, she becomes like everyone else,
Yeah, and
sort
she
of.
actually leads the charge to get rid of it. And there's just that sad moment when he's trying so hard to show her that he is thinking about her and wants to communicate with her, like especially when she's playing the violin, and then she just turns around and like locks him in his room to die. Yeah. His family's minimum involvement with him. Okay, so yeah, there's a sense of stress with the relationship with Greta shifting on him. These are all good answers. Okay, so there can be multiple antagonists for sure. Good. All right, so while we're still talking about protagonist and antagonist, what are your thoughts on these statements? Gregor causes his own downfall. Gregor is not responsible for his own death. Spoiler alert, if you didn't finish reading, he dies at the end. And Gregor's family is responsible for his downfall. So this is kind of like a rating. So yeah, okay, interesting. I don't know, sort of like the numbers geek in me is loving this thing because you can see people's ideas in real time. I feel like this is a good stopping point between having a verbal discussion, which doesn't happen too often in these Zoom classes, and still talking about, look at that big blue one. Gregor causes his own downfall. Everybody says, almost everybody says no. The one that people agree with the most is the green one. Gregor's family is responsible for his downfall. How horrible that your family causes your downfall. Any more responses? Who else wants to ring in on that? You can still sign in. There's only 10 people signed in, but you should still be able to sign in. I think there's up to 25 people. Oh, it's shifting a little bit. If we were going to say Gregor causes his own downfall, what would be the reasons for that? Are there any?
His body.
Yeah, but is he responsible for that?
It's kind of like in the video. It's like there's no reason. He just abruptly just turned with
Hmm.
no context. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm a bug now. Yay.
Well, except I mean the title is metamorphosis. So the idea is that he's changing. That's just the definition. The family's changing too. But I wonder how much changing happened before the beginning of the novella, because metamorphosis is not an instant activity either. It's a process over time. So I'm wondering if he was shifting in ways before the book even started in his metamorphosis. It's just that it manifests itself right there at the beginning. So then he was becoming the vermin for a while, and maybe he didn't notice it. And the reason I say that is because when we start thinking about the allegorical aspects, then we can start thinking about what that means in other ways. Okay, so the one people really don't want to agree with is Gregor causes his own downfall. Okay, so basically it's not his fault. We're sort of mixed on Gregor is not responsible for his own death. That one's sort of 2.9, so that's kind of in the middle. But then some people feel like Gregor's family is responsible for his downfall. I think that that I would probably vote about the same way personally, but as long as you have your reasons for your voting, then I think you're in good shape. So I'm just trying to ask the question so we can think about these aspects. So the thing to do would be to say, well, how is Gregor's family responsible for his downfall? Probably going to say that they neglect him, right? They don't know how to relate to him anymore. And in allegorical sense, he could represent, the other. He turns into something that they don't recognize as themselves anymore. And we could say that happens in families sometimes. People grow and change, and sometimes they grow and change in ways that, it's hard for a family to recognize or assimilate with. Um, Gregor's not responsible for his own death. We talked about that one. Gregor causes his own downfall. Nobody likes that one. All right, so that helps us think a little bit about the middle part of the story, really. All right, plot. So here's an interesting question, because there are some theories about the plot of this story, and some people say that the climax of the novella is actually the very beginning of the story when he wakes up as a vermin. Another theory says that the climax is when Mr. Samsa attacks Gregor, or there could be a different place. So what do you think about where the climax? Remember, the climax is not necessarily the most exciting place. The climax from our study of short fiction is where the conflicts are realized. I wonder what the other place is. What's the other place that y'all are imagining in the story? Maybe like uh, after they throw the apple after the dad throws the apple and it sticks on his back. But by then, I think they're already starting to see him as something other than them. If you're putting in some other place, can you put in the chat, can you put what some of those other places might be? Amber alert. Let's see in chat. I think it's when his sister starts to become distant. Yeah, at first she's looking after him. You can tell she cares about him a lot in like chapter 1, the beginning of chapter 2. But yeah, Yeah, but the conflict continues after that. So if there's a conflict continuing, we have to say that we're not at the climax yet. Just realize that there is a group of critics that say that Gregor waking up as a vermin is like the climax of the story, and that's one of the kind of different things that Kafka was doing with this piece by starting it with the climax. And really, there is like it's all downhill after that. Let me show you this image that I found. I think this one works too. You could prove either thing. I don't know what these different ideas are that people have over here. So if you look at this chart, I didn't make this chart, but it talks about Gregor starting in section 1 and his decline. And so we don't have much in terms of his improvement, except that in the middle of part 2, he heals a little bit from the injury that he has with his dad pushing him through the doorway in chapter 1. But it's pretty much a decline. And Gregor never really gains his former self back. He never really gains his understanding of why he's a vermin. He never really comes to any kind of logical conclusion about that. And he just eventually slowly declines. So that's some of the argument that people make sometimes for the fact that the novella starts with the climax. But I don't think that's the only answer. You could also say that it starts with the regular exposition. Oh, by the way, this guy woke up and he was a bug. And then the conflict becomes, what's he going to do about his job? How is his family going to operate? How are they going to interact with him? And then the climax probably being when he gets out and they think he's escaping, and the Mr. Samsa throws the apple at him, and it's clear that they don't see him as part of who they are anymore. And so you could argue that that's the climax too. And then the falling action with how they gradually fall off from interacting with him and thinking of him as Gregor. Really, he eventually just is a bug till he dies. They start talking about it. All right, so Kafkaesque. There's a lot more on this thing. I don't think we have time for it, but let's do Kafkaesque. I'm gonna skip this one. You should have watched the video that says that Kafkaesque is a word that we use in literature that refers to things that are like Kafka wrote. So surreal, illogical. You can't, when you finish reading the Metamorphosis, it's not like everything becomes clear and you know why Gregor was a bug. And Kafka is doing that on purpose to us, to get us to think. When we get back from Thanksgiving, we'll also talk a little bit about existentialism, which is a philosophical idea that we see present in this text. But usually the point is to point out how absurd life can be. And the video goes into a little more detail about that, but that's basically the idea with Kafkaesque. And so the Metamorphosis is a good example of that, how life can be surreal. There's nothing really more surreal that I can think of than waking up in the morning as a bug. Okay, I'm just going to skip through a couple of these because I have some conferences I have to get to. All right, allegory is an area that I wanted to touch on because I know that that is sometimes a little challenging for people. And when we look at the Metamorphosis, we can say, okay, we can read it on one level. It's kind of a crazy story if we read it on its surface level about a guy who wakes up as a vermin and gets totally, disenfranchised from his family and ends up dead. Or we can look at this on different levels. And that's what we mean when we're talking about an allegory. It's a symbolic story. So what are your thoughts about that? Why don't you join in on this slide here? I know I skipped a couple there for time, but what are some ideas that you have about how the Metamorphosis has a deeper story? Is it a story about how modern society is an alienating influence? I mean, Franz Kafka's modern society is not the same as our modern society, but as things develop, maybe the message is that we grow further and further apart as we have to spend more and more time working, spend more and more time feeding industry and the economy and all of that. Oh, interesting. This one's a pie chart. Modern society is an alienating influence. I think there are some specific ways we could talk about that in modern times, right? For Kafka, it was probably the idea that things are shifting from the rural to the urban and industry at the turn of the 20th century. Just think about your history, right? Things are turned, there's more factories, you know, the Industrial Revolution was about 100 years before that, but now things are really speeding up with automobiles and electricity and all of those sorts of elements, and how that is separating us more than it's bringing us together. But we could think about it in today's world too. How many people do you communicate with on a regular basis, but you only communicate through a screen? Well, okay, because of COVID, that's happening. But I mean, think about people that you could have daily contact with, like at school or whatever. How many people do you just communicate with sort of artificially? Or how many people do you have as friends or followers, or do you follow that you don't even know them in real life?
All of them.
All of them, right? I don't know, that creeps me out a little bit. I don't ever want to have anybody on my personal social media that I don't know them, but I'm in a different spot in my life. All right, what about engaging in meaningless work is dehumanizing? Well, he doesn't really love his job as a salesman. He's a traveling salesman. And so the whole story could be about how we have this pursuit of meaning, and Gregor doesn't have it. Yeah, okay, why is the little one, freedom is an illusion, is a tiny little pie piece there, I wonder why. He can't get free from his room. Dysfunction can destroy a family. Yes. Are there other allegorical ideas present in the Metamorphosis? Sure. These are just some for us to look at and think about. Let me see if I can finish this up. Okay, one big takeaway that I want you to have today from this interactive is, how is an allegory different from a theme? Because they are similar a lot of times, and even I sometimes it's in the way that you phrase it. A lot of allegories tell another story, like Animal Farm. It has a story to it with animals, but then it's literally telling the story of the Russian Revolution. So the animals all are characters that were real life people, and everything is a symbol for something else. But the Metamorphosis isn't like that. It's more like, this is the story of how, you know, people are dehumanized by industry and by the economy and by the pursuit of wealth by those 1%ers, right? A theme is a lesson that we can all take to heart and we can learn from. So a theme is a universal idea that we all have to come through at some point in time. But an allegory can just be the author's viewpoint. So when we're differentiating between those two, you might want to jot this down, because if you're ever asked to write about an allegory versus write about a theme, you want to make sure that you can separate those two things. So when we're talking about an allegory, we mean the author's opinion, projection. Kafka looked around and he said, man, these people who are in charge of industry just do not care about the daily workers. They don't give them a fair wage. They don't treat them with respect. They're trying to dehumanize them. Well, that's not something I have to necessarily take into my life. That's an opinion that Kafka could have had about his society at the time. So it's an allegory for that reason. This is the story of how Gregor turned into a bug, metaphorically, because he was treated as subhuman, right? I mean, even the guy that comes there is like, well, are you coming to work? Are you coming to work? Are you coming to work? Not, are you ill? Are you okay? Can we help you? Right? So then the difference is, here's an example. The metamorphosis is an allegory for the dehumanization of the working class. I think I just said that. Always anticipate my slides ahead of time. But theme is a lesson about life that we all think that we have to learn at some point in time. For example, the one from the beginning of this whole slideshow thing. Our identity is made up of what we project, but also what others perceive about us. That is something that we can generally all agree is something we need to learn about life. It's not only Franz Kafka's opinion about society or about identity. It's something we can all pretty much agree that we can create an identity, but it's going to be up to how other people perceive that identity, right? So that's more of a lesson. Sometimes they are real similar, allegory when it's an idea and not like a retelling of another story. Okay, so that is the end of my interactive slideshow. I'd like to thank you for participating in it. I know I went through some slides. I had too many for what I wanted to do today, and I wanted to finish, but hopefully those discussions will get you thinking a little bit about metamorphosis as a whole and start thinking about some of those bigger ideas. When we get back, we're going to talk about the multiple choice that you did on metamorphosis, and we'll start working toward writing an AP essay on the metamorphosis. So make sure that if you need to reread it, if there was something that was confusing, you get that cleared up. But that's where we're going when we get back from Thanksgiving. Are there any questions? All right, I know I went a little bit long today, but we do not have a meeting on Wednesday. The next time I'll see you will be November 30th, Monday at 2:15. All right, I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving. Enjoy your week off. Good luck at state.
Yeah, Miss. Well, if I'm going to class on Wednesday, do I just not go to your class?
Yeah, I'm not gonna have class on Wednesday.
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
You just don't have to come. But you do need to do your formative so that I can mark you present. That's it.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just don't feel like this is an upper level class, and I just don't feel like if I had classes twice a week, I'd have to give you more assignments.
I see. Okay.
Right? That's how it would
bye,
work.
Miss. Have a good day.
All right. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
Bye, Miss.
Bye.
Miss. Have a good week.
Have a good day.